So we learned from a new ABC News Ipsos poll that Donald Trump's favorability has actually declined since the Republican convention by a little bit. Now, to understand why this is important and then what the limits are, we should first talk a little bit about what normally happens when there are conventions. So if you go back many decades, the way that it typically works is the incumbent party has their convention second. But regardless, you see that whoever has their convention first gets a little bit of a bump in the polling and favorability, and then the numbers settle back down. And then whoever goes second with their convention gets a little bump in the polling and favorability, and then it comes back down. And by the time we get into September and debates, and then October, and all of the things that happen in the 2 months leading up to an election, the effect of the conventions is essentially sort of zeroed out. Things return to the mean. That's the normal situation. According to a new poll from ABC News and Ipsos, Donald Trump has not even gotten the bump in favorability. Donald Trump now has 31% favorability in the United States, and he went into the Republican National Convention with 32% favorability. Now, what's really important to remember about that is that there are many people who have an unfavorable view of Trump and are still going to vote for him, much like there are people who have an unfavorable view of Joe Biden, but are going to vote for him because they accurately recognize that he's a better choice than Donald Trump. So even though Trump's favorability is in the low 30s, Donald Trump is certainly going to get 40-something% of the popular vote in November, and exactly where in the 40s he falls is going to determine whether he gets reelected or not. If we look at the internals of this favorability decline, Trump's favorability during the convention or since the convention dropped 4 points among Republicans. So Republicans were particularly not thrilled with what they saw during the convention. On individual issues, coronavirus continues to be a big problem for Trump, where 63% of Americans disapprove of his handling. And then just for comparison, Joe Biden's favorability went up 6 points from pre to post convention, 40% to 46%. Now, it's still not great. And this is one of the reasons why, if you want to compare this election to one from times past, you look at 2016, where you had two candidates. In 2016, it was Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. In 2020, you have Joe Biden and Donald Trump, neither of whom has 50% favorability. Now, the difference between Biden at 46 and Trump at 31 is significant, but of course, it's ultimately going to come down to a handful, 5 to 8 or so battleground states, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. Now, in terms of who watched the convention, we talked last week and the week before during the convention coverage about who is this really for? We learned that 72% watched very little or none of the conventions. So it continues to be clear that voters who watched a lot of the conventions over the last couple of weeks are voters who are already definitely voting. In other words, they were definitely voting even before the conventions started. They weren't convinced to vote by the conventions. And number two, are almost certainly already decided. And that is an important thing to think about in terms of the reviews of the conventions. When Donald Trump brags that his speech was very well reviewed, or someone else says Trump's speech was bad, or Biden was good, or whatever the case may be, most people who watch these conventions are already very much decided, and a lot of people are simply not watching them at all. So what really matters is for us to step back and look at the trends. If you look at one trend, like the Gallup Presidential Approval Tracking Poll, interesting there that Donald Trump has never hit 50% approval on even one sampling of the Gallup Presidential Approval Tracking Poll. During his entire presidency, Donald Trump never hit 50%. But half the country does not vote, which means that even without 50% approval, even without 35% favorability, Donald Trump can still win. Inaction, not voting, is an action It has an effect, and it has never been more dangerous than it is right now. In many swing states, Donald Trump is doing okay. Shockingly, if you're paying attention to what's going on, you should be shocked by this. In many swing states, Donald Trump's approval on coronavirus has actually started to tick up, even if it's still one of the biggest areas of liability for Donald Trump nationally. So when we talk about if Trump wins, what will it mean? Yeah, it will mean that there are lots of easily manipulable people in the country. It will mean that there are lots of cognitively compromised people, but Democrats are going to have some responsibility to bear. I mean, if Democrats lose this with Trump at 31% approval, you can't just blame Trumpists for being dumb. That would be a complete lack of self-awareness. It would partially be the inability to control the narrative against Donald Trump, the inability to actually put together it doesn't even have to be perfect messaging, just good enough messaging to beat someone whose 31% favorability rating is historically low. Get out the vote will have been a failing for sure, because we know that non-voters from 2016 overwhelmingly favor Joe Biden. If you can't get them to vote, you're going to have some responsibility to bear as well. So there are lots of elements of this feeling like 2016. And when you look at these numbers, when you look at the polling data I looked at with you last week, the last thing any of us should be doing is thinking Joe Biden's got this in the bag. It's not reverse gaslighting. It's not concern trolling. It's looking a lot like 2016 in many ways. Hopefully it ends up differently. Let me know what you think. I'm on Twitter at @dpakman. One of our sponsors today is Surfshark, a premium VPN service packed with a ton of useful features, giving my audience 85% off a 2-year plan. This is under $2 a month. Plus, you'll get 3 extra months for free. It's 2020. If you're not using a VPN, you should really start. Online, government surveillance is a problem. Internet providers can sell your internet history. Big tech companies track what you do online. You can protect yourself against all of this just by using a VPN. And the one I use is Surfshark because it comes with all kinds of special features. It's a company you can trust with your online privacy. Surfshark hides your IP address, removes ads, protects you from malware and phishing attempts, and it allows you to stream content that's only available in other countries. You can install Surfshark on unlimited devices, and Surfshark never monitors or logs your internet activity. Surfshark is giving my audience 85% off a 2-year plan, which comes out to less than $2 a month. Plus, you'll get 3 extra months for free. Go to surfshark.deals/Pakman. The link is right underneath this video.